Yeah, that's not difficult.
And we will start with roll call. Trustee Booker,
Here.
Trustee Woods,
Here.
Just go to the other side.
Trustee Johnson,
Here.
Trustee Greaves,
Here.
Trustee Thompson, here.
You can add him when he gets that.
And now I would like to invite everyone to stand for the.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You.
Be heard.
There are not, no.
No state.
Yeah, so there is a first quarter in the May packet. So you'll be getting the second quarter in one of the August packets. Yep. So before consent agenda is approved, staff would recommend to pull item D. We just have a small change that we just want to make sure that we convey to the board. So we would recommend pulling item D, and then after you approve the consent agenda, we can go to that one before new business.
Yeah, I move we approve the consent agenda. Second.
Just so you know, you didn't remove item D.
Right.
So if you want to do that, there you go.
So what do we have to say?
So you can amend your second because he amended his motion to remove item D.
Amend my second.
There you go.
We'll move on to new business.
We need to vote on.
Sorry, that's the other vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed?
And then we can move to item D. Trustee Thompson, if you're okay with that.
Yes.
Okay. So Nate, do you mind just giving a brief summary why we pulled item D and the one change that's in front of you, not in the packet?
Sure. So we previously had negotiated development agreement with S Street Group for the Village 43 residential projects at 4300 Grenadier Road. S Street Group returned to the village with an effort to kind of clean up that document to reflect the true size of the development, which was minus the outlot. It previously included the commercial outlot. And as part of that, they wanted to revisit the negotiation of the value versus assistance. F Street Group did agree to increase the guaranteed value on the property to 21.5 million and 23 million over the life of the agreement. As part of that, in the packet initially, they had asked for assistance that we previously split up at a rate of 95% for 10 years and 65% of incremental value for 10 years. They wanted to change that to 12 years of 95% return on the incremental value, in 10 years at 65%. So that was how the document was worded in your packet. In front of you now, currently, we have renegotiated that with Alan's assistance to bring that back down. We do think that there's some merit to them increasing the value, the guaranteed value, but not as much as they think. And so what you see in red is the new language that says you will have 95% of your incremental value returned for a period of 10 years, and you will have an additional 1 year for a total of 11 years at 65% of your incremental value. So that's just the one change from the physical document that you have in your packet. Both staff and our council think that this is reasonable and is a good faith negotiation in response to their increased incremental value and as part of the corrected amount of property that they have on the site. So we would recommend that this agreement, amended and restated agreement, be approved. I don't know that, I'll defer to Bree and see if we need to include this with the motion.
I would include just a brief, when you make the motion, say with the inclusion of section 3.2 subsection 2 as provided. That's what I would.
There you go. I can answer any questions too.
I'm sure I have a question related to this. How much does this change the numbers? Or does it impact the numbers at all?
Well, I guess what number are you thinking about in terms of, like, let's say the village's overall assistance?
Correct.
So I believe in the packet, we have a pro forma from Bayer. If we don't, I can pull it up quickly. But yeah, I don't see it in the packet, but I can tell you that initially the village's overall assistance level was at 6.8 million. And with this additional year of 65%, we're adding about $400,000 of incremental value that is being returned to F Street. So it winds up at about 7.2% or 7.2 million overall assistance. Now, keep in mind that this is projection. It's based on our tax rate as it currently stands at a mill rate of about 21.61. So that could go up or down. The nice thing with this is that it doesn't obligate the village to pay them $7.2 million. That's what we're projecting. If our mill rate goes down and they're not generating that much tax revenue, they carry that risk. So that's kind of the beauty of this arrangement, in that we're not saying we're going to give you X amount of dollars. We're only saying we're giving you this percentage of 95% of your overall incremental revenue for 10 years. And then we're giving you 65% of your incremental value for 11 years now.
I got a question. Does this mean we're gonna have another discussion with them about the 1 acre outlot as far?
Good question.
Good question. It does not. And thanks for adding that. This also reiterates the fact that all of the new value that would come from that commercial outlot is not going to be reimbursed to either the new developer or F Street Group. All of that increment will come to the village. So this is a bonus for us. And that's why we wanted, that was one of the chief reasons why we wanted to renegotiate this as well, is because in that original agreement, we included the full 8 acres and said, we will give you the refund, essentially, on the taxes as a TIF incentive for the whole property. Now we're saying, oh, wait a second, we'll give you the incremental value in a quote unquote refund for your residential piece, but let us have all of the commercial increment.
Doesn't relate to that. That's a-
Yes. And so the McDonald's, team with McDonald's is working on it. They've engaged us with some preliminary site plan. They're going kind of through their corporate real estate process. I anticipate we'll see them in the next couple of months, kind of come forward with a plan for zoning and use approval and so forth.
Would show if it was public information.
They submitted a site plan to us, so
Okay.
it's public record.
Well, is everybody ready for a motion? I'll make the motion. So move that we approve the amended and restated development agreement. Street Group for the 100 West Primary Road with the change to section 3.2 that was provided.
Right, no roll call, just, you can say all
All
those.
in favor?
We need
Yep.
section 8. We just did the removed item D.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's right, you did say. Two. Okay. Consider, resolution 2409, resolution creating a tax increment for district number 6, approving its project plan and establishing its boundary.
I can provide a quick update, and we also have Caleb Thorpe with Ellers, our consultant on this effort. We've touched on this at the Plan Commission and preliminarily at the Joint Review Board. We will also go to the Joint Review Board tomorrow for final review. What you have in your packet is the final project plan for TID 6. Really what TID 6 is essentially the village looking to kind of pick up the remnants of our recently closed TID District number 2, along with the Algonquin School site, the Algonquin Park site, and create a framework and foundation to allow for some financial assistance for the potential redevelopment down the line of these particular properties that include the bowling alley, Bradley West Shopping Center, the old Celebration site, and the auto repair facility adjacent to it. So the project plan identifies the potential projects in the district. It also shows potential revenues and expenses. And we believe that this makes sense for the broad redevelopment of that area. With that, I'll stop right there. Kayla has anything to add, by all means. Otherwise, I think probably best we can answer questions.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. A relatively simple TID creation, small expenses of about $3.2 million. I did want to just point out that we show a small advance covering the first few years of expenses in the amount of about $114,000. And really that's just an estimate at this point in time, and will be more of an audit practice as you close your year-end books as to what that dollar amount will need to be covered. We show it coming from the sewer utility fund, and in conference with your finance director, there is ample enough cash to cover those first few years of expenses before you start to generate increment within the district.
Related to development, is there something currently in the pipeline or also first project potentially big number things this year?
So there's one that's in hand, essentially, if you recall, we did sell the former Celebrations property to a group that was looking at a senior living facility. They ran into some financial constraints as they started to do their final plan design and going out to market for construction services. And so they were kind of one of the spearheads and started a discussion with us to request possible assistance. And so that project, I believe, is one that would look to tap into this new TIP district. And then also, we have met with the new owner of the Bradley West shopping center, and she and her team are also very interested and have talked about a phased approach to redeveloping that site. That would, I think, also rely on some TIP assistance to make some really significant redevelopment changes over probably a 3 to 4 year period as we look out. Lastly, we do have kind of always ongoing conversations with developers as we do development tours, and the other kind of big piece that always seems very attractive as we do those development tours is the former school site, where there's been a lot of interest. We have put a couple of people in touch with the school district recently to see about their interest in selling that parcel, because obviously they own it. We cannot really dictate the pace or willingness of development there, but I think that's another site that's likely to change.
What is the current zoning on the school property?
That's zone R2, or excuse me, R3, single family residential, so it would allow for single family and duplex by condition.
I have driven by the site, but how many potential buildings could you get on the site this side?
So the site is about, let's say, 10 acres roughly, and our zoning of R3 generally on average are about 1/4 acre lots. So if we were to develop a subdivision similar to what you have in the adjoining neighborhoods there on, Parkland or 47th Street, maximum that would put you at 40, but realistically, you're gonna have to put in roads and utilities, stormwater management. So that would take up a portion of that land. That would probably take up 1/3 of it. So my guess is if you were to do single family homes there, you're looking at somewhere between 20 and 30.
What if you did townhome?
Well, so if you did duplexes, that would definitely increase the density. And if we were to do, we could look at rezoning, and you could add further density there too, but that would be a question for the planning commission and board. But if you did duplexes, let's say, that 20 to 30 units gets doubled.
Any more questions? So we will need a,
No, but it is a resolution, so if we do get a motion, we would need a roll call vote for approval.
trustee Booker,
Well, we have to.
Oh, we need a motion first.
Need a motion.
What's your way to make motion? Yeah.
A motion first and then a roll call vote.
right, that's
Yep.
right, yes, okay,
I'll make the motion.
thank you.
I move we approve resolution 24-09, a resolution creating tax incremental district number 6, approving its project plan and establishing its boundaries. I second.
Okay, all we're doing a vote, trustee Booker,
Aye.
trustee Woods,
Aye.
trustee Owens, trustee Johnson, trustee Bruce,
Aye.
and trustee Thompson, aye. Motion passes. And we will go on to the present. Okay.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Information only, we first talked about 10 Mile Park, our bid results back in May. And the village ended up, rejecting all bids. We opened bids for this project on, I think it was May 2nd. Our budget was $3.375 million. As you recall, this includes that restroom building at the front, the nature play area, basketball court, at that time, the skate plaza, and a pump track for bicycles. And then additionally, there was parking lot improvements in front of the restroom facility at the end of River Lane, but that was funded on its own through a village-only funding source. We opened bids, and for all of that work I just described, excluding the parking lot, we were about $1 million over our budget. So we explained to the board that we were going to value engineer this project, break it up into smaller components so that we could avoid a markup situation, and then try again. We did that during the month of June, and I am here to tell you that we unfortunately were not successful in how we broke this up. We did have a call at 1 o'clock today with our consultants on that path forward, but we are still over budget on our project. We broke it up this second time into two components, where we had the building, the basketball court, the nature play area, and then the skate plaza, which turned into pickleball courts. We decided that at our last meeting that the skate plaza would be pickleball. That was all bid together. And then the parking lot again was bid separate. Well, this go around, we had a lot of interest as far as people checking out plans, but we only received 2 bids on the project. That's never good. That's bad. And what that tells us is everybody, and we knew that, partially we knew this was coming, but we're bidding it late, now we're bidding in the month of June, and everyone's lined up all of their work for this 2024 construction season. And so we feel, and we're talking with the contractors, that this just greatly inflated their price, because they were like, well, we'll do it, but we don't really have capacity to do it. If you pay us a lot of money, okay. So I think that was one of the biggest things that we ran into on this go around. We were closer, but also it was alarming, some prices on the, specifically the building end, where we were trying to reduce and value engineer, went up. And again, that was the nature of these contractors being so busy right now that there was no competition. Okay, so what do we do going forward? Well, first of all, we do have, our funding is still there. We're not gonna lose any funding. That goes through 2026. Okay, so we still have all 2025 and 2026 to get this done, but our plan is to build this now in the construction season of 2025. We would go out to bid at the most competitive time of year, which is typically in November of 2024 or January, February of 2025. That is when people are lining up work for the following construction season. We are also reevaluating, because one of the biggest cost components here and the biggest, I guess, delta from the architect engineer estimate from reality is the building costs. Costs there are kind of just
going literally through the roof. And so our idea on the staff level and with, our consultants is let's look at, how do we reduce that building cost? Well, there's these prefab options out there. Are they gonna look as maybe as fancy or nice or commanding as the Rinka building design? No. But I think in order to get us within our budget, it's worthy of a look. And we're talking significant dollar savings here. I think the Rinka building was coming in at $150,000 to $90,000.
Yeah, we have one bid at about 950,000 and another bid at 1.7 million for this building.
The prefab units, and this is just today, so we have a lot of work to do to narrow in on, or to zero in on these costs. 350,000. Okay, so we're talking significant dollars. And honestly, they still look pretty nice. This will all come back forward to the board. This is just right now information, and we're looking into it. As we were talking at our meeting today, I got an email from another guy that also does prefab buildings. And so we're going to investigate that option as well. Their firm's out of Colorado. So I think with doing that, and then further looking at some site plan modifications, and then also with bidding this at a better time of year. Honestly, the second go around, that was what really killed us this time. We bid this at a competitive time of year. I'm pretty confident that this third time will be the charm. We'll have a project. We'll build this thing in construction season of 2025. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Unfortunately, yeah, we don't have a bid to award because everything's over budget, and so we're kind of back to the drawing board, and we're going to revise plans. We'll bring those revisions back to you, and then go out to bid fall or winter.
Question, so if you have to go down the path of the prefab units, those could be refaced to kind of fit the architectural structure.
Like, yeah, you can kind of customize these things, and I mean, from the pictures and stuff, they look pretty nice. And this one that we're looking at is like self-cleaning, and kind of, it's really intriguing. So I want to do our homework there. We're gonna try to set up a call with our architect, and then the village staff, and a rep from their company this week, and then also with that second one that just kind of came to light a few hours ago.
Are we gonna bid both options then, for the new building and prefab, or just?
No, I think the building has, that ship has sailed. That's just so far over our budget that we're going to be solely looking at prefab options.
And with the prefab, if that's the way we go, we don't have to put that as part of the bid itself. We can just acquire it as if it were a piece of equipment. It'll be about half the size of what Rinka drew up. Rinka drew up about a 24 by 20 structure, and this is
9 by 22.
Yeah.
So about half the size.
But the interesting thing there is that there are in the Rinka design, there was a clear women's and men's side. In this, there's two unisex bathrooms. So while we're shrinking it down, we don't think we're going to necessarily lose out on a functionality standpoint, because you'll still have kind of almost as much availability of restrooms with two unisex as opposed to, a men's and a women's side. As we talked with Park and Rec staff, if we are to host events there, let's say that the demand, there's a big event or something and there's greater demand, we could always look at just a simple porta potty rental for something like that, but for the everyday use of the trail and people kind of coming and going out of that park space, we thought that would probably be sufficient.
So if you're interested in these, I'll give you the spelling. You can just type in their company name, Google, the first hit you get. So the one that we're originally investigating is Urban Blue. It's URBEN BLU, all one word, Urban Blue. And that's what's considered a smart restroom. So it's self-cleaning, it'll wash the floor, like alert you if yeah. This thing's pretty high tech. You know, somebody, I'm picturing like someone has the app on their phone and saying, oh, the toilet paper's full. Oh, someone's gotta go fill the toilet paper. That sort of thing, or the soap is full. Yeah. The other one that just popped up in my inbox, is called Green Flush. That's 2 words, Green Flush. And they are out of Colorado. Now that one is not the smart restroom. I just talked to the guy a couple hours ago, but you know, a little more basic than the Urban Blue one. Very customizable and take a deeper dive. So stay tuned. This will come back once we kind of revise plan and get a good firmer estimate on how we're going to go forward. I would say sometime after Labor Day is when we'll hear about this again. We're going to meet with the team in end of August, early September. So that's when we should have stuff finalized.
All right, thank you. If there are no more questions, we'll move on to item C.
Trustee Thompson, I can kick it off. So we've done this every year. In midsummer, this is kind of what we use to start the budget process, where we do a 5-year lookout in our capital planning. Thanks to staff and especially Finance Director Danner for their work on putting this together. It's a great team effort. So today, like similar to what we did last year, we're going to have department heads. We have submissions go through their 2025 requests in detail. And then if you have any questions on their requests or in 2025 or beyond, feel free to ask. It's just that we're going to only go through detail on the 2025, because those are the items that if the board is okay with, that will include in the 2025 fiscal year budget. And there is no action tonight. This is only for presentation and get feedback. Based on the feedback that we get tonight, at the August 5th meeting will be a resolution adopting the CIP. I'd recommend to open to page 85 in your packet. That's the nice summary sheet that allow you to kind of follow along in general with these projects. Other public safety, that is from our consolidated services. So we're not going to go into detail on those. Those are items that have already been finalized either through Bayside Dispatch or North Shore Fire. So those are amounts that we're already tied to, and you're going to see fire go up at the lot involving the construction of the new fire stations in the North Shore Fire district here. So that already gives us more difficulty to play with, as it's taking on more of our GO debt. So staff, we have to get a little bit more creative as far as how we utilize the remaining capacity that we have for each and every year. So that's one narrative that we're trying to do our best to manage. So at this time, what I'll do is I'll give a brief summary on the village manager's office update for 2025, and then I'll kick it over to Chief Nimmer to give an update on his items. We'll give Matthew an update on his items for Public Works, and then we'll move right to the utilities for Tom and Matthew to give those updates. So for 2025, for the village manager's office, for computer replacement, we have this as an item in the the capital replacement every year. So we have another 15,000 for computer replacement. And that, just to clarify, that we did half of the village trustee devices, computers this year, so we'll do the other half in 2025. Our firewall, the typical lifespan of the firewall is every 5 years. So we'll be beyond that 5 years of replacements. There'll be a 10,000 that Bayside IT is expecting that cost to be. I think the switch replacements were due to be replaced a year or two ago, but we deferred that, but we're at a point we really can't defer that anymore. So we've included that for another 20,500 for the tax levy. And then lastly, this is a new item that was added. We've had a lot of Wi-Fi connectivity issues in this room. That's also impacted the recordings. So I basically asked Bayside IT to do it the right way. What is that cost needed to do? And really it's refreshing the access points and the wireless controller to be able to provide that better connectivity in this room especially. So that's going to be 25,000 that they have included as well. So those are items that, talking with our IT, that are recommending help with some of our higher priorities. Okay. It's like Peter has an issue outside. So Matthew, do you mind if I kick it to you? Okay.
Okay, let me scroll to where it is. Okay, so for 2025, we have, I'll start with equipment, and then we would go. This is a year where we don't have a 5-yard, that's the plow truck. We don't have one of those in the budget for this year. We often you can see this again, I hope by next year. But our big one, which we've deferred for a couple of years, is our, what's called a 1-ton. This is our truck number 83. So small in between our pickup and the big 5-yarder, so kind of a utility truck that gets used pretty routinely, mainly in the spring, summer, fall months. So that's in the budget, and then these other couple items, the ground master lawn mower, talked about this a little bit last CIP cycle. We have been, since 2020, been doing all the grass mowing in-house. And the grounds master is a lawnmower that is about 20 years old at this point, and so it is in dire need of replacement. And this lawnmower mainly cuts like our real big open areas. So they'll cut down by like South Branch Creek. There's a big open area there, along and steep edges. So along Beaver Creek, just west of 51st Street here. And we use that too in parks. Really large, it's a very larger lawnmower. And then we have some attachments for snow plowing operations. We've added a lot of sidewalk here over the last few years, mainly with the latest DOT project of Green Bay Road. And so what these snow attachments are going to help us do service sidewalks, a lot with snow attachments, one of them. So adding a second set will allow either the tool cap and or another skid steer be deployed at the same time, and we can lead sidewalks snow plowing a lot faster. I'll pause there if there's any questions on any equipment related items. Not. The big road project for 2025. So this year we have County Line Road, which is going to be starting August 12th. And then next year is 51st Street. And you had, public information meeting on this where we had all those concepts laid out. And this is the road diet project, where we're gonna be coming from like Beachport south all the way down to Beaver Creek. Then the bridge project is funded, through WISDOT, and then going south of the bridge to Brown Deer Road. So that's our big 2025 project. We're currently under design, and we'll go up for bid on that one in the November, January for construction in 2025. We have our normal roadway repaving program. That's just neighborhood street, mill and overlay type stuff. I think that covers it.
Just a quick question, on the 51st Street, repaving in that, I was asked this question by one of the residents, are they gonna be charged anything for that?
No, so the village assesses, and so that's like when you do hold a public hearing for re-ditching and culverts. But 51st Street does not apply to that at all. Yep, not a penny.
Some mezzanine boiler system.
Oh, sorry about that. I keep forgetting. It's meant to be a village hall. The village hall stuff now falls under ours as well. So that is replacing the boiler over here at Village Hall.
This is an item that we've deferred multiple years. When I got here back in 22, our building maintenance tech mentioned that this is something that he's been asking for a few years, that has continually been cut from the budget. And when it's been taken over Public Works, this was one of the first things that Dan Bishop also told me as well. It requires a lot of maintenance every year where we have to bring in a contractor to service it because it shuts off unexpectedly. So hopefully with the replacement of the new boiler system, that will save some routine maintenance costs that we're doing annually too.
Yeah, you're seeing big costs with this every year. This is, if we didn't include this, Dan would,
He'd be upset. We want to make that happen.
Do we have anything else that we're deferring? That somewhere along the lines, we're gonna end up.
windows. But that's a different story. Those are okay.
Lower priority. I mean, chiller's another one that is continually deferred, but we have that in the plan for 26. We think it lines up pretty well. So I would say the chiller is another one. Yeah, there's a few things in 26 that are that were considered for 25, but we feel like we can get by through another year. One thing that anytime we do this exercise, we want to be really cognizant of what the tax levy impact would be. Just to give you a reference point, last year it was about 455,000 that we had for the CIP on the tax levy portion. So we're proposing 470, which is in that ballpark. It comes out to be about a 3% or so increase, but that's where we're trying to be really cognizant to try to keep it within that ballpark.
I'm just gonna ask, in regards to the replacing the boiler system, are there any solar powered or any eco-friendly heating units that you guys could substitute for that?
So there are, but they're far more expensive, so they're really pricey. Yeah, I know we were, this is what I know, Dan worked up with the contractor that maintains our system, and J&H is the one that recommended this unit, which is pretty budget friendly.
So no boiler require a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah. It's one of the things that we would love to do, but that would have a pretty significant impact on our tax levy if we were to do that. And some of these items that are presented or in front of you now, the department had presented last year and wanting to include in last year's CIP. So, that's where we want to, some of these items we just can't keep deferring. Chief Nimmer, since you're back, do you want to go through the police items?
Sure.
Oh, did you have a question, Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, it's a question, because I know the federal government has a lot of money out there on the street related to energy efficiency.
Is it possible that we could look at some of the dollars to maybe take care of the windows or anything else?
Yep. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's taking the time to do that research, and that's something that we can certainly look into, for sure. So I think I could, you know, we can put in a few calls to figure out what those resources are. A lot of times, I think with those grants that you're referring to, there's a municipal match. That would just be one thing that we would have to figure out, but yeah, we're always open to figure, you know, researching that.
Okay, the police department has 3 items that were included in the CIP. The first item you'll see is the standard vehicle replacement. And so we're looking to replace 2 squad cars. One notable item is the price of the vehicles are just going up. They're averaging about $44,000 to $45,000. So they were hovering in the high 30s for a couple of years, and now they've increased. This last vehicles that we purchased this year were about 44,000. So just something to know. That price, the 135, includes that. It also includes the equipment for the vehicles. Unfortunately, Ford keeps changing the size of the car. Every time they do that, the equipment that's in the old car doesn't necessarily fit into the new car. Primarily the cage in the back, oftentimes doesn't fit, so you have to get a new one of those. So that 135 includes the vehicles and the equipment for those squads. The question that you might have is, we're running the cars about 4 years, roughly about 100,000 miles. And you can imagine the 100,000 miles is just a portion of it. It's the idle time that those vehicles are running throughout the year. That adds just another probably 20,000 to 30,000 cars. So we're on pace to keep replacing 2 vehicles a year. We'll see in the future years we bump it up. So, for the most part, we don't have a lot of downtime with vehicles. The vehicles that we have, if there's something wrong, it's usually under warranty still, and so we get that turned it on pretty quick. The second item is the speed trailer. One thing I'll point out on the speed trailer is that you'll see a picture of it. And throughout the preparation for this, we've chosen a lesser option at $10,000 versus the $25,000 picture that you see there, to save some cost. We'll be able to buy what would normally be a mounted sign, and we're going to work with DPW to put it on a trailer to make it mobile and to save some cost there, because the one you see there is about $25,000. So we'll still have the same effect, but it'll just look a little different. So I just want to point that out, because that change was made in the last week or so, which I'm fine with. I think it'll work out just fine. I don't want you to expect to see that up there. It'll look similar. And the third item is our flock cameras. Right now, we currently have 5 flock cameras throughout the village. We have 1 flex camera. The flex camera, we can mount the camera for about a week and a half. It's solar powered, but we can put it anywhere in the village. We've used it for some complaints of maybe some drug activity, so we're able to put it in that neighborhood and kind of keep an eye on vehicles coming and going, and do some investigative leads from that. So it's been very effective as far as that goes. So that puts us at, they also increased the cost, which everything seems to be going up. So they're $3,000 now. The flex camera is $3,500. So that's a total of $18,500 we're currently paying. We're asking to increase that to $25,000, which would give us 2 additional cameras for locations yet to be determined, but we'll put them in the most efficient areas. They've been very, very effective. Certainly the one located at Walmart's been very effective. We just had one recently off of Schrader Drive. If you remember, that was the first camera we put in, and the hotel actually paid for that for the first 2 years. And we've kept it there because it's been pretty effective. We had a stolen car just the other day that went through there while they took off, and we got in pursuit. We deterred any crime from happening because they were hanging out back by the hotels. presumably breaking cars or something, and we were able to identify the car based on flock camera, and then, at least try to apprehend it. So they've been very highly effective. I say it's like having a police officer there all the time. Be able to kind of monitor stolen vehicles and people that are wrong. So it's been very effective. Those are the three items that we have. I'll take any questions if you have it.
Question related to, what do they call them? Red cameras or people who run lights? Do we have anything?
You don't. Currently, state law does not allow those to be implemented. I suppose you could implement them, we just can't take tickets off of those cameras yet. The state legislator proposed City of Milwaukee to be a test pilot program. I don't know where that stands, if they have agreed upon that or not yet, but they were looking at least having Milwaukee test. So right now, that's a long answer to your question, but as of right now,
Then we can move to, if you want to turn to page 90, we can go through the utilities portion. So let's start with water. So Tom, if you want to go through the water projects lined up for the 2025 CIP.
This is pretty standard, on our CIP, for the water utility, which we get there. The first item is our, annual water main replacement program. We have, I believe it's $500,000 relay for 2025, and that's going to be First Street and also, related to the roadway reconstruction project, and then if there's, money left over, we'll do Wooddale as well. And research disinfection station, we always do a $5,000 annual amount there, just because there needs to be upgraded. That station is about 15 to 16 years old, and so there always seems to be something that goes on there. Our meter reading equipment, that's an annual replacement cost for both our meters, or smaller meters, and then also for radios. So we can do our drive-by meter reading. And then we do a hydrant valve replacement, which is $75,000 a year to make sure that we're reacting to any of the hydrants that we identify as being a problem, or any valves that we identify as being a problem through our annual maintenance exercise program. Question?
Okay, thanks, Tom. Then Matthew will take the sewer and stormwater projects.
Start with storms, because that's the easy one for 2025. All we have is just our annual ditching program. That will just be on a location yet to be determined, but that's where we replace the driveway culverts and we do ditching for public hearing on how much it's going to cost for the driveway replacement and the culvert replacement. Future years it gets a little more, we have some more fun with some creek restoration work, but in 2025 it's just the ditch program. Sewer is mainly business as usual there. We always have the same three items: inflow and infiltration control, lateral replacement, and the PPI program. So inflow and infiltration control, that's generally sewer lining projects. So we pick a basin where Dana, our sewer technician, he's out with the truck cleaning sewers and televising them. We identify problem spots, and that's what we line, and that's where that comes out of inflow and infiltration. Lateral replacement, pretty self-explanatory. We're just replacing sewer laterals. That's from the main to the home. And then the PPI program, that's the MMSD program for mainly sewer lateral line. The only other additional item here is our sewer relocation item. This is part of the Sherman Boulevard reconstruction. We've presented those plans previously, but that's a 2026 Milwaukee County funded project from Bradley up to Dean. Part of that project, we have to relocate some utilities, and The overall price tag on this, you see is 800,000, but in 2025, we're just spending 25,000 of that. That's due to engineering work and concepting for sewer relocation. Pretty confident that hopefully we can reduce this overall construction cost too. Some other ideas that we've had recently, engineering. Stay tuned on that. We'll be working on that this summer, fall, into the winter on the sewer relocation plans.
The only other thing I wanted to hit as we look at future years, and Tom and I have had a little conversations. Replacing the water main relays. If you go back in our history, a lot of our water main relays were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So there's going to be, because that's when a lot of them were constructed, there's going to be a wave in the next decade or so that we're going to start seeing a lot of replacements that are going to be needed. So one of the things as you take a look at the future years of, especially on the water utility side, is bumping that up quite considerably to help recognize that if we don't do that, we're going to get really behind in our replacement of water mains. So at a later date, Tom's going to go into a lot of more detail with you. Board on that, but that's just something that I want to say that's going to be a trend that we'll start talking about specifically with the water utility. So that wraps it up for the 2025 projects. Any other questions on any 2025 projects or 26 through 29? Yeah, if not, this will be a resolution August 5th, and you have the document for a few weeks. You'll be able to review that. If you have any other questions on any project, feel free to reach out to me and I can help answer those, okay?
Moving on to the 2025 proposed budget process and parameters.
Great, thanks, Trustee Thompson. So this is something that we've done for, this will be the third year. It's a way that we can have, a preliminary budget discussion before staff gets into the budget, just to talk about some challenges, issues, some potential parameters for the budget, and basically to go through the timeline with you and talk about expectations that you would have for the upcoming budget. So you'll see in the memo, a lot of these points have been part of the previous budget discussions as far as the expenditure restraint program and levy limits. So I'm not going to get into those specifics, but regarding our TIDs, there's two main things that I just wanted to point out and emphasize with TIDs. Number one is the TID 2 closure. On April 1st of this year, we passed a resolution to close TID 2. The village levied a total of about $750,000 that went directly to TID 2. So now that TID 2 is closed, the village has the option of no longer levying that amount. So it's really a question of, do we give some savings to the property owners here in the village? Do we utilize some of that to help with our levy with some items? So because of that closure, it's going to give us a little bit of some flexibility that's going to help in this year's budget. So that was just the first talking point that we wanted to point out. So just to say this in more general terms, to just help further understand with TIDs. So let's say you had a TID property that was initially valued at $100,000 at the start of the TID. And by the TID closure, it closed at a value of $1 million. So the difference between the $100,000 valuation at the start versus the $1 million at the end, the difference is $900,000. So all the taxes that were collected on the base value, that's that $100,000 value, that was going to our general levy, okay? But then everything taxed above that, that difference, that 900,000, all that revenue was going into the TID. Well, though that same property, even though the TID is closed, that same property will still pay the same amount of taxes, potentially. It won't go a little bit of it to the taxing jurisdictions and everything else to the TID. It'll just go to all the taxing jurisdictions. So that's an example to play in your mind as far as how there's the capacity of some flexibility when it comes to our levy this year with the TID 2 closure, okay? The other thing to keep in mind was we had these administrative charges that we were charging to TID 2. And that was a revenue that was being collected in the general fund. We will no longer be receiving that administrative charge. So that's another thing that we just want to keep in mind as when we're putting together the budget. The second thing to keep in mind is we did create TIDs 5 and 6. We probably won't do an administrative charge to the degree of some of the other TIDs, but there will be a revenue that the general fund will see. Pay for and compensate for staff. So that's another thing just to keep in mind. And then last thing I just wanted to talk through with you, and we did include the pro formas for TID 4, so you can see an update on the financial status of TID 4 here, but our continued deficit reduction efforts. So last year was the first year that we removed 1/3 of the debt for the streetscaping that we took out of TID 4 and put it on the general levy instead. And so we're going to continue looking at that approach to continue moving it off. We think with the TID 2 closure, there might be a possibility of just doing it all this year instead of, another third, maybe potentially taking the other 2/3 and just moving it to the levy so we can be done in a better way to help TID 4 deficit reduction efforts there. So, but that's another thing that we want to continue to work on. I feel pretty confident that this year we're kind of seeing that climax of the deficit, and then in future years, we're going to see that start to shrink. So I think we're at a good point. The pro formas have been pretty consistent over the last year as far as what we thought the models would be. So we haven't really seen any surprises to that impact there. So that's all been good news. The only other thing I really wanted to point out with the memo is last year we did make some changes to utilities just based on the aging infrastructure, and for part of it paying for the DPW facility. We'll probably continue to explore doing the same utility rate increases to stormwater and sewer that we did last year. So that's just another thing that as we put together the budget that we want to keep in mind, because all that has a financial impact on our property owners. The memo shows the our timeline that we're projecting. So by September 9th, you would receive a 2025 proposed budget. And then on the 16th, September 16th and October 7th village board meetings is when we would have the presentations on the budget. And if we occur a really significant discussion that we need more time or project more time, we could always call September 30th. Because September will have 5 Mondays. So September 30th could be a special meeting if we needed to go into more detail on the budget. Okay. Otherwise, these are always similar questions that we have every year, but this is where staff would be happy to hear some general comments and feedback from the board prior to starting the 25 budget. So once again, these questions are there any general services or operations you'd like staff to review or reflect differently in the budget? Do you have any specific expectations as to the levy increase that staff looks at for the initial proposed budget? Are there any specific changes you would like to see to the budget schedule or presentation compared to previous years? And then what specific information would you like shared either prior to the budget or during the budget session? So I think what would be helpful is just to go around each trustee, and feel free to expand on any of those points in case you have anything different to provide to us, and this just allows us to establish those expectations before we get started.
Mr. Booker?
No, I don't have anything.
I'm not sure I understand nothing about the closure of to with $750,000.
Okay, I'd be happy to go back. Yeah. So in the example that I provided, where the base value is 100,000 at the beginning of the TID, and let's say the value is $1 million at the end of the TID. So in the example, taxes that would be levied for the base value at 100,000, that was going to all the taxing jurisdictions like it normally would for all of you as residential taxpayers. But for that increment, for the change in value over the life of the TID, and this example happens to be that other $900,000, the taxes that are computed on that valuation don't go to the taxing jurisdictions, they go directly to the TID. So now that the TID is closed, we could still potentially tax on that change, but it doesn't go to the TID anymore. Instead, it goes to all the taxing jurisdictions. So there's the potential that the taxing jurisdictions, with the village included, can get more funds directly into its general operations rather than the TID. That $758,000 represents the taxes that were collected on that increment value. In that example, it's the $900,000. So that's the amount that is really up to play, where if you as a village say, no, let's not utilize that, we would, that could be, the village has the option of no longer levying on that amount, and therefore there could be some tax potential savings for the entire village. But it also gives an opportunity that if there's things that we wanted to address, for example, the TID4 deficit reduction efforts, it gives us a little bit more cushion when in the end you look at the average village levy increase. It gives us a little bit more flexibility of what that would look like in the end on a property taxpayer.
Okay, so it sounds to me like we've got $758,000 sitting somewhere.
It's not sitting anywhere. It's if the village decided that we would not make any changes and that we would still want to levy the same, that same amount that we did in the previous year, you have a cushion of $758,000. So in other words, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong in how I articulate this. If the board, if you decide, hey, we're going to increase our, if you look at last year for like the general fund, for instance, we're going to increase it by $758,000. That if you were to do that, we have that cushion from the TID2 closure that basically could reflect a fairly neutral tax impact from 2024 to the 2025 budget. So don't think of it like a fund balance. It's not a fund balance or anything like that. It's just an amount that we were levying to put into the TID every year that is now up for grabs, if we want it to be seen that way.
But out of that $758,000 going forward, part of it goes to all the other tax districts.
Yeah, we have our share is about 33%, I think 35%, somewhere in there, Derek.
Basically, it's $758,000 I think last year. Like part of your tax bill, you're paying for the village, you're paying for the school, you're paying for the town, your sewer district. And then right at the end, you allocate TID amounts to each of those. So part of the mill rate includes your property taxes paying for TIDs. Just trying to say. $758,000 that was on. Most recent.
That would be tax savings to taxpayer.
It could.
That was the question. It's either it could be, or you could do something else.
Yeah, it gives us a starting point where it would be. But that's then a question for the, a direction from the village board would be, we direct staff to put together a 2025 budget based on what our current needs are. And we would put together a budget that would, kind of be similar to how we approached the previous few. Where it'd be right around, I think recently it's come out to be like a 2-3% or so increase. But the advantage that we have this year is the TID 2 closure. So when you look at the net impact, it's gonna come out more favorably because of that on your average taxpayer. Yeah.
I guess related to that, so the TID closed early, and I think with a state law, after a certain number of years, you have to have those other taxing.
It would have been it could have been open one more year.
1 year.
Yeah.
So this is said that state that 1 year, that we don't have to allow everybody else to use the same tax rate. Well, the new tax rate, because they'll be getting those school districts be getting their.
Yeah, and basically we're seeing it now instead of next year. And if we would have not closed it, what would have been different would have been the TID would have collected more revenue. So that fund balance of the TID would have been larger. So that initial check that we would have been divvied up amongst all the other taxing jurisdictions could have been a little bit larger, but a municipality will want to, it's in the window, you can't utilize any funds. So it's more in the municipality's best interest. Close it as soon as possible, as long as it's got a positive.
Understanding this correctly. I'm not sure I am.
Okay.
There's $758,000 the village has been paying on their tax bills. At the bottom.
And those are only the properties that are in the TID. So what will happen is while portions of their tax bill isn't going to TID 2 anymore, so there's a savings, but then that savings is shared amongst the entire municipality.
So you're saying that if you didn't do it, our tax rate would go down.
The levy could go down.
The levy amount conceivably go down instead of staying the same.
Correct.
Or our other option is we leave the levy where it is. And we just have extra money.
That's your cushion right there.
But we'd only get our percentage of it, right? Because the other municipalities, we wouldn't be able to use the whole.
We get our share.
Yeah, the 35% of that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we could spend if we have the levy.
So we're looking at about $250 million.
Yeah, so, I mean, unless you have a different direction, I can tell you as village manager, I would recommend, every time that, all department heads, we work together on the budget. We come up with, based on the service levels that are asked upon us to deliver, this is the budget we recommend. So even though we have that cushion, I would still recommend that would be the direction we would, a budget that we would put forth to you. I think the advantage that I just wanted you as a board to know is that cushion that we have this year. If staff brought forward, let's say a 4% increase in the levy, know that, differently than other years, we have that cushion where that net impact will be more positively in favor for property owners because of that. That's really the takeaway that you as a board should have at this point.
So you're saying that it wouldn't be like 4%, it'd be like 3.5%, more or less. I mean, using numbers, not using.
So with the size of our budget, this is a really rough number, but about $100,000 equates to 1%. So you're probably looking, Derek, am I about right on that? So you're looking at about somewhere 2.5%, 3% or something like that?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're talking just the villages.
yeah. So that's kind of the size and percentages that we're talking about.
So if you had been looking at a 4% increase and we decided to use the whole thing, we could say. We're only gonna raise it 1.5% this time.
Sure. You could say that.
Or we. could
If you
say-
want to, yeah,
or-
that's up to you.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to get a field number here. Otherwise, we could say we take the whole 4%, but that give us $250,000 to take care of something that's been deferred forever. That we could just take care of this project and then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a service that you really, wanted to incorporate that was, 100, 2,000, 100 or, somewhere in there. As far as operations, there's the potential for that, but Derek and I can also attest that when we get all the department proposals, typically the number that we start with is roughly about a 7% increase. And we know that as a board, that's probably not a starting point that you would want to see. So that's where we work with department heads to try to get that number less. So there's always requests that come in that are certainly deferred. And that's where we get, creative to try to get to that number that we feel politically would be attainable for you all to support.
I mean, because from my point of view, I know that everybody's budget has must-haves, pay and salaries. These are the things we need, these are the things we want, and then we have blue sky over here that if we ended up with an extra $1 million, here's what I'd like to have.
Yep.
Well, how much of the things are in we've really got to do them, but because of political considerations here of not being able to ask for a 15% increase in, tax levy, our projects, like we're talking about the windows, and eventually got to be get done. The chiller, the mezzanine boiler, all these things that have been sitting out there that sooner or later are going to blow up on us, and we're going to have to pay for them anyway. Are we at the point where if there is a little bit of extra money sitting here, that's really not accounted for anything, instead of doing that, is this worth throwing at some of these projects that we need to get off the books? I mean, like, what I understand, we're spending a lot of money fixing the boiler every year. Now we're at the point where we're not gonna pay the maintenance money anymore, we're gonna do it, but how much are we paying this guy to come out and fix the boiler 2 or 3 times a year? I mean, is that almost all of the $100,000 that we're gonna have to spend on it, and then we don't have to pay him for coming out in the middle of the night?
Yeah, it's not that much, but that's where I can say, like, based on our discussion of TID 4, for example, I think this is from what I mentioned, I think that's why this is a perfect year to move. And Derek made that recommendation, so he deserves the credit to move the remaining 2/3 of the debt for the streetscaping to the levy. Because, we have the added flexibility, so let's do it a year early to take care of it. So that'd be an example to your point where, we can, do the budget normally how we have done in previous years, but there's some of those projects that, while we may not want to defer here, there's an advantage of doing it now. We could, add that as, we could almost add some of those in so you as a board could look at those up front. Remember though, a lot of the one-time projects are in the capital improvement plan. So that's where we could always, if you want us to look at some of those and see to move it up, we could potentially do that. But that's where my recommendation would be, let's look at the overall 2025 fiscal year budget first to see where that comes out before we would change the levy amount in the CIP. So.
I mean, that sounds like what I'd like to see, but
Okay.
if we end up with this money sitting here that we have not allocated to the budget or anything else, what kind of project that we have out there that we need to get fixed that we could do now that we couldn't do otherwise.
Yeah.
Or that we put off for another couple of years. Can we bring something forward? I mean, when you were talking about the water mains and stuff that have been out there since the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Are we at the point where we're gonna get slammed for the next decade? Because we need to replace all these things, and then we're gonna be sitting there for 20 years with nothing else. Because we can't, you know, we need to spread them out. So it's, you know, it's like regular maintenance, we replace 10% of the water mains every year, then we know it, and every 10 years we've taken care of the problem. Or are we at the point where we're struggling to get all the 50-year-old ones and the 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds that are starting to come up, we've been deferred.
Yep, great example. I think with that example would be, I mean, that's tied to the water utility, which is paid for through the user fees. Not through the tax levy, but that, and a rate analysis needs to be done before changing the water utility. So with that example, it's a little different, but I think the note that I get from your discussion point is, maybe potentially kind of having that list of, well, if we were to put together the budget normally, this is what it looked like. But if you want to know what's kind of that secondary items of things that are being deferred that could be included in this year, we could present that to you just so you can see what that list would be in case you would want to move anything up. Or included in the budget and operations because we have that flexibility. I think if that, I could certainly work with staff to kind of compile that secondary list so you can see that during the budget presentations.
Because the police department were very good about replacing the vehicles. For Matthew's department, they come up on a regular basis, we replace the vehicles. I want to just make sure that as far as the building and some of the other stuff, we're not deferring the stuff until it's catastrophic and we don't have any choices. And then we're back here trying to figure out what we're going to, then you're spending the time figuring out what do we cut to come up with the money to pay for this, since you can't just go out and say, hey, everybody, give me $5 so I can, village.
Yeah.
I need to do this.
Yeah.
If we can get ahead of some of these long-term things.
I could tell you another example in the budget, and Derek heard me talk about this enough. We included a 1.0 FTE vacancy factor this year. Just understanding in every year you're going to have employee turnover, so it includes that. Question is, what if you have a year where you don't have any employee turnover? Well, then you went over budget. So that's a number that, we knew there was some upcoming retirements, but that's not always going to be the case every year. So that's a number that with the 2025 budget, a recommendation will be to try to lower that vacancy factor. So that's going to add some expenses on wages and health insurance, et cetera, on that. But this is another opportunity where we can amend that number to give us a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the budget, as another example.
Mr. Vine, question is, and you still talk about is tip for the deficit? And if I'm looking at this correctly, 2024, we're $6,357,436 in deficit. My question is that, okay, how much do we really owe on the tip? I mean, because each year, each successive year, down to 2032, we still owe $1,299,000. We don't really see a break even or a little bit to 2033. I guess I'm just trying to understand. Okay, now the $6 million that you owe in 2024, if you were to pay that, you still owe the rest of it throughout the other years?
No,
How's that?
so from like a audit and Derek, once again, correct me if I'm wrong. From an audit perspective, that's what the deficit is showing, but what they'll do is if you have funds that cover that, like our general fund, for instance, or our general fund reserves, like that shows that if the TID were to close today with that deficit, that the village has funds on hand that could help cover that deficit. It's not like that we have to owe today the TID, that amount. So right now, what that pro forma is showing you that if all the estimates remain, correct, which it won't, it'll change. But our estimates are showing that with a 3-year extension, that at the life of the TID, that we won't need to cover any expenses, that it will get back in the black and that it'll cover with a positive. But as long as we have a deficit, we have to have some funds on hand that would cover that. And that's where we have a really sizable general fund balance reserves that we could potentially use for some one-time projects, but we can't do that right now because it has to cover that deficit. So that's a long way of answering your question, Trustee Owens, is saying, no, we don't, it's not like we would have to pay that or cover that amount every year. It's just from an audit perspective, we have to show that we have funds on hand that if the TID closed today, that we would be able to cover that deficit.
But didn't we spend $5 million last year on TID 4?
No,
We take that out of the general fund?
It's a running total.
no,
So this is over like 20 years, we're about $6.5 million. So basically, I transferred cash from the general fund to TID 4. So TID 4 would have negative cash. If there isn't a separate bank account or anything, the village has one main checking account that includes all of the different funds. So as of right now, TID 4 would be showing no cash, but that's because the general fund is covered by 6 million.
So-
The general fund cash is only. Because it's covered so much of.
so when you see it, it's not actually paying that much, it's just covering it from an accounting perspective.
It's money that's tied up, like you have bills that are, that are out there and just
Out-
has to just be able
yeah.
to.
Outstanding due, think of it, it's an outstanding bill that's due, but it's not like we have to pay it today. If we see added increment, and added valuation to TID 4, the added increment over time could help pay that off, which is what the pro forma is showing.
It shows you make $4 million.
So as of right now, if this holds up, we wouldn't, the general fund and other funds wouldn't have to pay. Well, I shouldn't say other funds because TID 3 is paying $250,000 every year that the TID 4 won't pay back. But it is showing that the general fund balance in the end won't have to pay anything at all.
Yeah, it shows that it makes $4 million, right? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah. What it's showing you, Amos or Trustee Owens, is if the TID closed today, the general fund balance or other fund balances would owe $6.3 million. If it closed today. Okay.
Because I was looking at all, man, how much is that TID owe?
I know, okay. Yeah, if it was like that, I mean, that would be like hundreds of millions. I mean, that would be really bad, but yeah, it's just that we have to have, because if we didn't have cash on hand that would cover that, that's where when we got into our bond ratings, we thought it was bad, it would get way worse, because now we're showing that we don't have any funds to cover that deficit. That would be really bad news.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things it goes back to when you early emails you sent out related to commercial and development plan. And I think
Yeah.
if there was a lot of good ideas in there. You need to figure out ways how to cut some of this cost.
Okay. And that's where we have been using some of the tourism funds since that's sitting there, but I think that's where we could explore some more creative solutions to help, whether that would be a one-time capital expense or maybe some operating expenses. So for sure, we can look into that.
I put a button that I do like option one of moving the debt payments to the four. I remember that was a difficult conversation, you know, when we got to look at that, and I think getting out of that situation of the debt payments really, there to be support funds. So I agree with that, like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I guess we gotta, we can look at everything, for projects are great too, but that sort of gives us room going forward to do other things.
So based on the recommendations, what I'm hearing is we'll put together, from the same framework or lens, we'll put together similarly for the 2025 budget. I think the one change is we'll kind of have this secondary list of items that, let's say it's not in the initial proposal, we'll let you know these are things that at least staff discussed. And then we'll make sure to continue to have the CIP included in the discussions, that if there are certain items, and we'll make sure on the secondary list, we reference them in the CIP, because if there's ever any of those 26, 27 items that could be moved up to 25, as we go through the budget discussion, if you ever wanted to add that back to the budget for 25, you would have that opportunity to do so through those board sessions. So I'll make sure to kind of have that secondary list to help that discussion. Otherwise, I think we can, based on the comments, present if we were to move the remaining debt from PID 4 to the general tax levy, we'll show you what that budget would look like.
I guess I have one concern as we move forward. It comes to the expenditures of the TID. I know we're taking quite a bit of administrative fee to cover our costs. My concern at some point in time, if we run out of TIDs, how do we cover those costs?
Yeah, that's where we've had internal conversations of how we can, what that administrative charge should be moving forward. So this might be an opportunity for us to reassess. I can tell you we have a really good idea for the new TIDs of what that dollar amount should be reflected. So it's really a question for PID 3 and PID 4, what that value should be reflected. So that will be a reevaluation that we'll do internally to see what that may look like.
Yeah, just because I'm just looking at the one, it's not significant, it's only 1.5, almost 1.6 million over the life of the TID, but
yeah,
if you add all the TIDs together that we have,
yeah,
it's a lot more.
yes, right.
All right, if there are no other questions, that brings us to the end of our agenda. We've got them moved in second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to check the radar real quick to see if